welcome. In today's video I'm going to attempt my most intricate sewing challenge to date. I want to make a copy of my lovely velvety t-shirty top. Now at Christmas I was very lucky to purchase myself an overlocker, a serger. I think it goes by both names depending which country you're in. So with the help of my overlocker and some lovely Christmas fabrics, I'm going to try and copy this shirt but make it in a chocolatey brown. Now I said on my Christmas video I bought myself 2 meters of chocolatey brown stretchy t-shirty fabric, and I was wrong, I didn't. I've got 1 meter of this t-shirty chocolatey brown, and I also purchased 1 meter of this rich velvety fabric to make the velvety panels. But while gathering my things together, ready to copy this shirt, I found I actually have a little bit of velvet left from a long brown skirt I've recently made. So I'm going to see if I can use this velvet to do the panels for this shirt, because it doesn't need too much of it, and save my meter of purchased velvet for another project. They're very similar. One's slightly more coffee coloured and one's a rich dark cocoa. I've also got for this centre panel here on the shirt, that happens to be black velvet here, I've got this lovely golden velvet. Now I've bought another bedspread in this golden velvet fabric because I want to make a 4th long skirt. I already have a navy blue, a chocolate brown, and I've made the green one, and one last skirt. I promise, just one more in this golden yellow fabric. So here I have the fabric from one of its pillowcases. So I'm going to use this pillowcase velvet to make the top panels in this shirt. So let's get to work. I'm not planning to cut this apart the same as I did with my yellow supermarket £6 in the sale top. I'm going to have to make the pattern while keeping this shirt completely intact because I wish to wear it again. I love it. So let's go and mark up a pattern. Now this top is constructed using several different panels of fabric. We have these side panels here and here, and this front panel. Although this bit actually looks like 2 pieces, it is 1 piece of fabric across the front with a bit of trim detail added for interest. So this is actually one section of fabric, which I suspect I will cut a pattern piece on the fold. So I'll have my fabric folded and this will be the shape of my pattern piece. So we've got our two side panels, a single front panel, and then this top black section that I'm going to do in a yellowy gold is actually 2 pieces. If I can undo them, there we go. These buttons do undo down the front. So this is an opening shirt front here. So we will need 2 panels of fabric here. It fits nicely over my head without undoing the buttons. So I could make this 1 piece of fabric, and I might do that and just add these as fake details on the front. I'm not sure. I just might do that. Then at the top here, these little lacy bits are actually the t-shirty fabric with an extra lace overlay. And I've got myself a little bit of lace specifically to do this little detail. So I went onto eBay and bought myself a 1/2 meter of fancy lace, just so I'd have some to do this little shoulder trim. And I've got lots, so I'm going to have lots left for other projects. So drafting a pattern. These front bits are relatively easy. I'm going to lay the shirt out. I've got some greaseproof paper and a pencil, and I'm going to concentrate on one shape panel at a time. So for this side panel, I'll make sure I have all of it there, and I can feel the seam here. So lay that panel out nice and flat. Won't go that way, I'll have to go this way with my sheet of greaseproof. And follow the shape all the way around the outer edge. And where's it gone? There, I can feel it there. Then feeling and checking, do the same with those inner seams of the original top. And finally, the same along the bottom hem. Move the shirt away, I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but here's my pattern piece. So now I'm going to add a seam allowance and a hem. So I'll give myself a decent amount of turn up for the hem, and a seam allowance up the side. So I'll follow this up for a seam allowance. The shoulder. And the same up this side. There's my side panel piece. Cut that out and I have a pattern piece ready to pin onto my fabric. And I'm going to do the same with all the other sections at the front of this shirt. Now for the back, which is made in the t-shirty fabric, I'm going to make a pattern piece in half. So I'm matching up my two side seams so I can find the centre of the back panel. And I'm going to do the same up at the neck. I bring the two out of shot, bring the two shoulder seams at the top together to find the centre of the neck. So I have the centre on the neckband and I have the centre of the bottom hem, and if I pull them together it'll hang and drape in a nice straight line, and that's going to be the centre fold on my pattern that lies against the fold in my fabric. So the arm is going to be the most fiddly bit, so get everything lying nice and flat on this half back. I can bring in the greaseproof, match it up along this back seam that's going to be the fold in my fabric, and then I can trace out the shape of the back panel just the same as I did with those front pieces. Now for the sleeve, things are a little bit more fiddly. There's a seam from the underarm to the cuff, so I'm going to follow that seam and shake things about so it lies as flat as it's going to, and lay that out. So I have the stitch seam here, and that folds out to this top edge of the sleeve. I'm actually going to fold my greaseproof paper in half for this one. So this fold I actually want to put across the back seam of this sleeve and put the sleeve inside. There. So I want the top of the shoulder on that centre line, and I want this crease fold I've created along that fold in the greaseproof. Flatten everything out as best we can, and then fold this closed. And this is where I'm going to draw my sleeve. So I've got the end of my sleeve there. I want extra to roll up the cuff, and I want extra for a seam allowance. So although the sleeve is here, I'm going to draw slightly further out to give myself a seam allowance. All the way up, follow it up to there, Then I can check and feel for the seam in the same way I did with the front of the top. Feeling with my fingers and folding back the paper to check, which has this curvy line in it. I need to add some seam allowance to that, so I'll add a little extra. So that's this side of the sleeve. The arm is going to be the same on this side and on the other side of this greaseproof, but the shoulder curve is going to be slightly different to the front and the back. So I'm going to pin this pattern down through all the layers. So my pin's in the back and at the front, just so I can keep everything nice and still. Remind me not to wear white when I'm filming. That shirt really glares against the camera. So I've put some pins in right the way through along this seam edge. I'm going to turn it over, and that's held everything together. So I can follow the sleeve up here to the armpit and follow this seam line along here. Across the bottom with a seam allowance, there's where the actual sleeve is, and then up the edge again a seam allowance. So we can turn it over and take the pins out now. And remove our sleeve. Now I've got this very pointy, I want to round that up a bit. So this is definitely rounder. So I'm going to round that up just at the top of the shoulder. So once you've made all your pattern pieces, pin them onto your fabrics and cut them out just like any other pattern. Now this is my back panel, which is the t-shirty fabric, and I've actually laid the centre back seam. Well, it's not a seam, the centre back is on the fold in the fabric. So I've got 2 fabric layers deep. I'll cut across the shoulders and around my neckline. Bit of scrap. There's my back, my side front panel, the lower front panel, and I've still got the yellow bit to do that goes up across the top of the bust. When I'm cutting the velvety fabrics, I'm very conscious of which way the velvet runs. This is going to be my front side panel, so I want it to feel all smooth and silky as I run my hand down along the velvet. If I put my hand the other way, which is now pushing upwards, you can feel it grabbing and pulling and a little rough. So I want the nice silky feeling running down the garment. So I make sure that I laid my pattern on the fabric so that the silkiness is running downwards. The t-shirty fabric doesn't matter so much. It's all soft in all directions. So the last bit, the yellow panel, not true. I have a little tiny t-shirty bit that goes up on the top corner. I've decided that I'm going to cheat with my front panel. This front panel is supposed to open up with buttonholes and an opening, but I've folded over the seam allowance that would be there, and I'm actually going to lay this on the fold of the fabric and cut this front panel as one piece, and I'm going to add lace and button trim to make it look like it opens, but it's going to be completely fake. With the top I already have, I find I can fit it over my head quite comfortably and put it on without undoing these buttons. In fact, I never do undo the buttons. So we've got that side panel there and the front there, the bottom there, and my white sleeve. I'm sorry, these don't quite meet perfect because this curve is going to give the whole thing some shape. When we start stitching these together, that curve will create a bit of roundness for the bust to fit. That's all the panel pieces cut out and ready to use. And I skipped ahead and I've stitched up the sleeves. So we have a sleeve to go on there, and there will be one to go on the other side. So that's roughly how we're looking at the moment. Right, let's get these off the paper and all stitched together. The first task is to join these two, I think, and then this curved one will stitch into there, treating this then like one piece of fabric. Now I've got my main panels off the greaseproof paper and laid out onto the table, and I'm thinking the first thing I'm going to do is join these two centre panels together at the waist. Well, I think it's just under the bust actually, it's not quite as low as a waistline. But if these are going to get joined together now, and they've each got a fake front, I think I'll stitch that on there and the lace on here first before I join them together. So when I join this centre seam, all these bits will get joined together along the middle there and make it nice and strong, secure, neat and tidy. So that's my first job. Sort out this bit of lace and add that tube of silky velvet. I took a strip of the yellow velvet fabric and stitched it into a tube shape. Now I've taken that flattened tube and pinned it onto the brown velvet. Now it can be stitched on to make that fake front seam. Now out with all the pins and it's done! Yay! Lovely! Next, to tackle the lacy trim on the yellow front panel. It's all pinned down and I'm going to run it through the sewing machine. Right, so ready to pin and stitch these two together, and that line runs lovely right down the middle. And on the finished garments, in the same gold colour, there's actually a strip runs along there. So I have no idea why it does it, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I can cut that. Have a strip of gold and get stitched under there like that. So how does she look? Let's open her out and see. Yay! A lot of work, but we have this front panel. Woohoo! Looks like a little dress all on its own. Now, the back of this panel, it looks great at the front, and actually because of the different directions of the velvet, this is looking a different shade to that, and it's just the way the light's catching it, and that's nice. I like all these different little details. Now there's a lot going on at the back of here. We've got the brown, the first bottom brown velvet, then we've got the little inner stripe across the waist, and then we've got the velvet that is the back panel. Now on the shirt I'm copying, this has been run along on the serger just to tidy it up, but I think what I want to do, because I'm more comfortable with that for now, with this big bulk of lots of layers, is I'm going to cut this strip a little bit narrower, fold it under and hem this all in, so I'll get a nice neat tidy finish here. So I'm just going to run a hemming stitch along there to hold this all down nice and tidy at the back of the garment, or the inside. So that gives me just a nice neat little flap here instead of all that untidy fabric. And actually I'm going to put a little securing stitch just across this bit here to help hold it, make it go downwards instead of flapping around. But it's going to be stitched at either side, here and here, when it's stitched into those side pieces. And I'm going to put a little stitch there to hold it down, so it'll always sit downwards when the garment's been worn. There, lovely, nice and tidy. Now we can start pinning these sides on. Which one's which? This bit's there. How does it look? Just pinned. Yay! Cool. Again, we're getting it's the same fabric here and here, and we're going smooth side down. It's just the way the light is catching things. They look like they're different shades. Let's pin up the other side. So here's the overlocker, and it's not my first click. It's not the first time I've used it. I did use it to stitch up the sleeves for this top, and they worked really nicely. What I have found with it, it's quite noisy when it runs, more noisy than my sewing machine, but that's fine. And it's light. Although it looks quite bright on the camera, it's actually very dim working with. So I've got my table lamp shining onto my work area as well, so I can see better what I'm doing in here at the workspace. I wear reading glasses, so that doesn't help. Here's the front of my top, looking lovely. What I did do was I measured from here across to the other side of the yellow, and I'm 9 inches, and I was delighted to see that the top I'm copying is also 9 inches from this point to this point, so I was very pleased with that. So here goes. I'm still a bit nervous of this one because I'm not used to it at all. I'm using 4 spools of cotton. It's possibly not necessary at the moment, but I know that's going to give me a nice secure finish. It's all set up for stretchy fabrics, which is what my sleeves were, a stretchy fabric. And I've gone to the extremes of setting it up nice and secure as though you were stitching a swimming costume. So I get a nice strong seam, but also stretchy. This fabric is not stretchy, so it doesn't need that, but I'm going to use the same stitch. Actually, what I'd like to do is make my stitch a little bit wider. And I don't know how to do that. I think, yeah, this is tension. Let me go and take a look at my instructions and see if I can find out how to make my stitch, my zigzag, a little bit wider. Okay, I had a read of my manual, and there's a little switch here on the side of the machine, just under this metal plate. And if I have it towards me, I get a narrow seam width. And if I push the switch away from me, I get a wider seam width. Right, let's see. Oh, I'm feeling all nervous. Okay, here goes. I don't know why, because it's working nicely. Different slippery fabric. It's dark in here. I think it's about to tip down with rain outside. It's gone all dark and thundery. So I'm going to try and keep quite close to the edge of my yellow fabric. See how we go. Holding on to this little tail from the, oh, you can't see, there's a little tail of cotton out the back for my last bit of stitching. So I'm going to use that to help pull it through to start with. Here goes, noise. Now, as you see, I like to keep it running once I've come to the end of my stitching. I keep going and just slowly drawing it out the back. So I have something to start my next run of stitching with. So these are the trimmings. It's been cutting off the side of the seam before it goes in. And what have we got? Well, that looks nice and neat. I don't know how well you can see it on the dark brown. There we go, try it on the yellow. It coped really well over this thick chunky bit. Now then, what does it open out like? Beautiful! Let's do the other side. So here goes, lift. Just like your sewing machine, there's a lever at the back here which lifts this foot up. It doesn't lift it very high. There's a metal bar here that's pushing down on it, and so it's still really tight and close in here. You can push it, it springs up. I tend to find I want to lift it up with my hand just to get my fabric in. So the main front panel's almost finished. I just need to add these little lacy shoulder bits. So I've got my t-shirty piece cut out and a square of my fancy lace. And this needs to go up here, that edge. So the way I got this one to pin in place, I've actually pinned the t-shirt fabric onto my lace first, just to keep everything in position. So that's going to go there. I'm actually going to trim this edge here, cutting off that extra bit of lace so it's the same shape as the t-shirt material. That'll match up there. Now I've cut this with excess seam allowances. I think I must have drawn the pattern with seam allowance and then I've added seam allowance as I've cut out the fabric. In typical me style, I'd rather have too much than not enough. Take this pin out and go through everything. I'm going to add another one on the end here. Okay, let's bring back the serger and serge those seams, and we should be able to open out to that. And this will get turned in with the neck, and that gets turned in, and this all gets hemmed. Woohoo! I feel you've been looking over my shoulder all day, not actually seeing me, just my hands working away. So here's how we're looking at the moment. Wonderful, I'm really pleased. So now things get easy. I can treat this like a normal sewing pattern or a more basic sewing pattern. I've got my front, where's it gone? My t-shirty back and my sleeves. So a front, back and some sleeves. Then it'll be time to tidy up hems and necklines. I'm really pleased, it's looking lovely. It's taken ages, but then I'm doing lots of new things. It's had lots of pieces to put together like a big jigsaw, and I've been practicing on the serger, something I haven't used before. I'm very pleased with it, it's going great. So I think I will pin and stitch this all together, and I'll see you for a reveal when it's all finished, because it's very much looking like the finished garment already, but there's still lots to do. Pretty boring to watch. So I'll see you when it's all done. Here we are, not actually finished, but I have assembled all the basic pieces with our front and the back and attached the sleeves. I've still got lots of things to do before this top is completely finished, but I couldn't resist showing you because I'm really pleased and I'm happy it's looking nice. So here I have the top I'm copying and the brown top I'm making. There are lots of little finishing details still to do. On the top I'm copying, there's a piece of lacy trim around this seam where the chest panel meets the side panel. So I'm going to use a bit more of the same lace I used up the centre for my fake buttonhole piece, and lay that along this side seam and stitch it on, of course. So I shall hand stitch that in. There's also here at the shoulders where we have that little lacy bit where the lace meets this black front panel, in my case a yellow front panel. There's a strip of lacing here that also has some black silky ribbon threaded through it, which is what I've done here. I have some brown lace and yellow silky ribbon. That'll go across my shoulder seam. Well, it's not quite the shoulder, it's where this lacy bit meets yellow. So I shall stitch that in as well. Now ideally I should have put this piece and that piece on before I added the arm, but it didn't. So I'm just going to turn it under itself and stitch it in by hand, and it'll look just fine. Nobody'll know but you and me. And my original copying top also has a little bit of trim around the neck edge. It goes all the way around the top. Oh, it doesn't. The back is just smooth t-shirty finish. So it only goes around the front panels of the top. That's interesting. So I've got a different piece of trim again, and this is 100% cotton, so it'll be nice and soft against my skin. How can I show you? Nah, not well. There. So we've got this little zigzaggy pointy bit, which I'm going to have sticking up around the neckline. And that actually goes in the back of the garment. It gets attached in the back so that you can just see that little pointy bit sticking up. So all of these trimmings still to add, so lots of hand stitching to do, and lastly 3 little golden buttons to go down the front. But that's what I've liked about this top that I'm copying, is all its different sections and all its little tiny details make it an interesting top, or at least I think so. So I'll go and do all that stitchy work and we'll do a final reveal of my completed top. So here we have it, all finished at last. All its extra bits of trimming and lace added, and I'm very pleased with it. I think it looks great in its lovely rich chocolatey brown. And a quick turn to see the back. So I took a top that I loved from my wardrobe and copied its pattern and design in order to make a second top that I also love, just using a different colour scheme. So that's it for today's video. It's been a bit of a long one, lots and lots of stitching and details going on. So thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Remember, whatever you're doing, have fun doing it. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed today's video, don't forget to click that like button and let me know. Click subscribe, and YouTube will make sure you see my next video. So bye for now, and we'll see you next time. And don't forget, whatever you're doing, have fun doing it.